Dude, we are live. What's up, guys? This is Dem Keys, and uh, today we're going to be doing a working stream, not necessarily a study stream. Um, so I've had a productive day, I would say. Earlier, I did a stream, a mute stream, where I was working on the middleware app for my VTuber app. So this middleware app is mainly responsible for getting data from the Twitch API and then sending it over to the main VTubing app. So it's going to do some processing and process whatever the data is into a proper message that can be consumed by the VTuber app, and then it's going to send that message over to the VTuber app. So in the past, in the past being like in the past couple of days, I I was kind of thinking about exploring Twitch IO, which is a Twitch API library, but for Python. And I still might do that at some point in the future, but then I was like, you know what? I'm fairly comfortable with Twitch lib, which is a Twitch API library for C Sharp. I'm fairly comfortable with it. I've used it. I've made stuff with it. I know my way around Twitch lib. So I was like, you know what? Let's just use Twitch lib for now to create the middleware app, and we can explore Twitch IO later on. So that's what I've been doing. So today I spent the day setting up. Hold on, let me show you. So I already had the middleware app project set up. I just needed to, start working on it. In the earlier stream that I did, I sat down and wrote down a bunch of stuff, a bunch of notes relating to message formats and like what this app is going to be doing and stuff like that. And I also had to get a bit of a refresher on some information about my own. Well, I mean, this is all my. I don't know why I said my own. Some information about the VTubing app, because there's a lot of like implementation details that I've kind of forgotten, which is why I noted it down. And I'm glad that I actually noted it down because, dude, there's tons of information here. If I hadn't noted this down, then I would have definitely forgotten it. So I'm glad that I have I have this information. I'm doing this for all of the apps that I'm building. I'm creating notes for every single one of them to mention various types of details, be it high level details or even implementation details. I mention everything in there. It's essentially a game design document for the app. I don't know what the app equivalent of that is, but yeah, I like noting down this stuff just so that in the future, if I come back to it, I'm not sitting there trying to figure out how everything works, because that kind of wastes time and energy. I've been in that kind of a situation in the past, so I don't want to repeat that. Okay, so yeah. So I sat down and figured out what I want this message format to look like, what I want the system design to look like. So in terms of the message format, what I'm thinking is, so far, right now, so far, the app is only supposed to process chat messages and channel point redemptions. Actually, speaking of channel point redemptions, I just remembered I had to do something. So give me a second to set that up. Okay. What was I saying? Yeah. So far, the middleware app is only supposed to process two types of images. Well, two types of messages, not images. One, chat messages, and the other is channel point redeems. So that's the only two types of information that it's supposed to process. So anytime one of those two types of information comes in to the middleware app, then it's gonna process that and create a sort of formatted message out of that. What I'm calling over here an MDL message. MDL is just middleware. I couldn't think of a better acronym, so I was like, just for the sake of naming it, let's name it this. So we have an MDL message. Actually, I should go one level lower. So I also have two other types of messages. So depending on what type of information has come in, we'll form a different type of message. So if it's a chat message, then we'll form a chat message object, and that object is going to have all of the data that's required, and then that object will be converted to a JSON string. And after that, we'll form an MDL message, and in the MDL message, there's going to be a message type, which is an integer, which can either be, so far there's only two, chat message or channel point redeem message. And then there's going to be the message body, which is a JSON string. And then that whole thing is going to be converted to a byte array. Actually, I think I might first convert that to a JSON string as well. Yeah, that's going to be converted to a JSON string as well. And then that's going to be converted to a byte array because I need to form a raw message that I can send over to the VTuber app. This is a sort of requirement for my app that anything that's sending a message over to the VTuber app, if you want the communication system to be able to process that message, it has to be a raw message. Otherwise, it's just gonna ignore it. And this made, well, it wasn't this necessarily, but like just in general, I had sort of a side sort of a side thought where I was like, okay, why don't I give WebSockets a try? Because like I've tested out WebSockets, and it's pretty convenient. I've tried out WebSockets in like other projects, and it's pretty convenient. It's fairly high level. It's not as low level as working with bare bones sockets. And I built my entire like communication system on bare bones sockets. So like I built it from scratch, which I'm glad about because it taught me a lot, not just about doing socket communication, but also doing stuff like task-based asynchronous programming. Hold on, what's going on? It seems like my system is having some issues. Are we good? I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, so yeah, implementing a communication system from scratch, it taught me a lot, and I'm still using that communication system. Over time, I kind of like iterated over it and improved it more and more. That's why I have a bunch of these different protocols, which these are basically like different message formats. I have like a body pose message, DVT-MP message. What else? A DVT-MP message packed, which is a packed version of a DVT-MP message. What else? So far I think that's it. There was another one which was just like a random message or something like that. I don't remember where it was. And now I'm okay. So each of these messages that I've mentioned, they all get wrapped into a raw message. So any new type of message that I'm trying to introduce, it has to be wrapped in a raw message. And see, this is one of the reasons why I'm glad that I took the time to build my own communication system, even though it was like a lot of time and effort, and there was like a lot of iteration. Over time, I sort of improved the system, but through that, I got to learn quite a bit. So I'm glad that I implemented it. Would I do it in the future? Probably not, unless there's a reason to do it. Mostly because of the time and effort that it takes. Though, okay, so one of the reasons why it took time and effort was because I didn't know too much about implementing this kind of a communication system. But now that I do know how to implement it, if I did decide to build my own communication system from scratch again, it would be relatively quicker. The only thing would be like actually designing the system. The only, let's say, headache over there would be actually designing the system. And designing the system involves also designing my own message protocols, unless I want to implement some already existing protocol, which I mean I could do that, but usually if I'm building the thing from scratch, then I find that creating my own protocol tends to work a little better than using an existing protocol. At least for like the specific use cases that I've had, it's worked better. So yeah, I don't know. Would I do it in the future? I take that back. I said earlier probably not. I guess I would say depends on the situation. Because like the whole reason you would want to um, build an entire system from scratch is if currently existing systems don't solve your problem. So let's say you have, let's say whatever it is that you are doing, it requires faster response time. It requires not taking too much time on processing a message. So you would want to be working with bare bytes only, as opposed to sending sending a JSON string over and then deserializing that JSON string and then working with that data in there. Rather than doing all that, if you feel like you can get a lot more done with just working with bare bytes, then yeah, sure, implement it. There's a lot more reasons why you would want to do it, like very specific systems design choices, very specific, very specific. What's the word I'm looking for? Very specific requirements. If you have like very specific requirements, and you feel like you would be able to accomplish all of that or satisfy those requirements much better with your own custom system, then yes, by all means, build your own thing from scratch, roll your own, so to speak. But throughout my journey, which this is another reason why I'm glad that I took the time to implement stuff myself, is because throughout that journey, I didn't just learn about low level bare bones stuff. I also got to explore higher level protocols, higher level systems, stuff like WebSockets, for example. So the whole idea with WebSockets is like you don't have to implement it yourself. It's a protocol. It's a protocol that's already designed, and it just needs to be implemented. So there's an implementation for the server and an implementation for the client. There's like specific design choices that have to be made. Like basically the protocol. You're implementing a protocol according to the specification, right? So WebSockets is its own protocol, and these days you'll find WebSockets libraries for almost every language out there, or at least like if we are talking about the more the most widely used languages right now, there's a decent chance that you're going to find WebSockets libraries for all of them. There's definitely one for C Sharp. There's one for Python. Um, I'm pretty sure there's going to be one for Rust. There's going to be uh, someone's probably taken the time to make it for C and C++ as well. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's been implemented. So the idea with WebSockets is that you don't have to concern yourself with designing or implementing the protocol. You just have to focus on creating the server and the client. Or in this case, well, starting the server and the client. Well, no. WebSockets does give you a bit of freedom to sort of implement your own server. And to a certain extent implement your own client as well, just to define the behavior for what's going to happen when you receive a message. But yeah, WebSockets is one very good example. There's a couple of other examples as well of protocols that have been implemented that you can use for communications. You're not limited to just building your own thing from scratch, but you can if you want to, and I did it. Okay, enough about this. I've been earlier I was mentioning I don't know if I kind of branched out from there and ended up on this, this huge, I don't know if I would call it a tangent. Yeah, I was about to say this huge tantrum, but that didn't seem like a tantrum. It was this huge tangent. WebSockets. So I'm kind of tempted to implement WebSockets through a library, of course, implement WebSockets in the VTuber app. The thing is, one difference between using any regular library and using my communication system is that my communication system only works on UDP. I'm not doing any TCP stuff, so there's never any connection happening. It's just I start up the server on this side, the server being my VTuber app, and then any other application on this system or on any other system on the same network, it can send a message to this app because this app is always listening for messages. So as long as I send it to the right IP address and the right port, the VTuber app is gonna get the message. So unlike WebSockets, I'm using UDP. WebSockets runs on TCP from what I know. So a connection has to be established. That being said, that's not really a deal breaker. It would just require like additional controls, which I don't mind implementing if I ever need to implement WebSockets. But like the communication system that I've set up, it seems to be sufficient because I've built a bunch of things for it, so it seems to be getting the job done. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna implement WebSockets in the thing in the main VTubing app. Maybe at some point, because dude, WebSockets is like super convenient. So the thing is, if I would have gone with the WebSockets approach, it would have solved the communication systems issue pretty quickly. However, in my VTubing app, there have been certain situations where I needed like bare bones stuff. I needed to not be doing JSON stuff. And I don't know if WebSockets would have allowed for that. Like, I don't remember. I haven't used WebSockets in a bit. So I don't know what kind of data you're allowed to send. Actually, let me just hold on. Let's real quick. Let's take a little detour. Give me a second. Okay, so what am I looking for? There was a WebSocket library, a pretty famous WebSocket library for C Sharp. Okay, give me a second while this thing takes its own time. WebSocket C Sharp. Uh, as long as the GitHub thing show. Oh, there it is. Yeah, great. All right, so let's transition back. Okay, while this is loading, so what I wanted to do today, well, I was actually, I was like, okay, today I'm gonna start up the stream and immediately get into doing all of the work, but I kind of just ended up yapping because I got distracted. Um, okay, so the WebSockets thing has opened up. I just want to see an example of, hopefully this is an example of a client. Okay, open message. Okay, then the message data. Okay. What can data be? Is there a send thing here? So this is a server. Yes, I think this is a server. Oh, also this is an interesting thing. This is something that I like about WebSockets is that you can implement it in this way. You're like it's a different it's its own protocol. If that makes sense. And like this is actually recognized by because it's part of like the I forgot what the official standard is called, but like this is supported by browsers and shit, which is why we're able to do stuff like this. I think this is meant to be one server. I don't remember. I'm gonna have to look into it again. But yeah, setting up a server is as simple as something like this, where you set up the link and stuff, and then in here you have events for open, message, error, and close. So it's event based. Anytime it receives an event, you can like hook methods into those events, and anytime the event is fired, so anytime a message is received, the event will be fired, and you can do something based on that. I don't remember where. Okay, was this says connect to the server. Okay, send text message. You know what? Maybe I should look at the documentation, because the documentation might mention what kind of data you're able to send. this is mainly to satisfy my own curiosity, and then we can move on to doing the work that we were supposed to do. This is a client. Okay. All right. Wait, this is a server. This is not a client. This says WebSocket client, but oh, maybe this is a client, and we're still describing, because like even with the client we would have to set up these things, right, where we describe like what happens when certain events. So yeah, this might be the client. My bad. So there's a send command. I need to see what all are we able to send. Like, does it, like, in what way does it, if you would like to get to the message data, you should access e.data or e.raw data property. And you can determine which property you should access by checking is text or is binary. Okay, so binary is definitely an option. That's good to know. So we can send binary data. We are not limited to just text. Is there an API reference? Right, so there's send. Is there a link here? Yeah, okay, the send data, the send method is overloaded. You can use string, byte array, or file info to send data. What does file info do? Also, good to know that there's an async thing here. Dude, I'm getting more and more tempted to actually set this up in the VTubing app. Because to be honest, dude, I wonder how much of an overhead WebSockets would have compared to doing it bare bones with you know what, let me Google this. Because like, okay, what I'm trying to do, there was one specific use case where it was absolutely important for me to send only the relevant bytes and not do any JSON operation. And that situation, let me explain what that was. So I was capturing body tracking data using media pipe on another machine. And then I would process that into a message and send the message over to the VTubing app. But the problem was I was doing it the lazy way, where I just packaged it up into like a JSON string, or well, I packaged it up into an object, and then I serialized that to a JSON string, and then I sent the JSON string over. The problem is the JSON string has to be deserialized. Now, it wasn't just one message being sent. This was multiple messages, like, I want to say multiple messages a second. Like that's how much data was coming, because it was live data. It was like, this was live body tracking. I would move my hands, for example, and it would track the data, and then, or well, it would track the movement and then output data showing what exactly that, where exactly that, how do I even say this? It would The program would track my hand positions based on landmarks, and it would output the landmark data, and then I could then do something with the landmark data, which in this case meant that uh, I was packaging that up. I was packaging it up into an object and then sending that object as a JSON string over the network. But again, this was live data and it was being sent like constantly, which meant that the VTubing app was constantly deserializing JSON strings. That's horrible. Like, that is tons of string operations. Like that is just awful. And even the performance of that was pretty shitty. So like that didn't really work out very well. That was actually why I had to like change things up and create a separate thing. That was why I created this. Let me show you. So I had mentioned earlier that I have a couple of different types of messages, right? In the VTubing app. This was one of them. Body pose message. This contained the tracking data. You can see here it mentions landmark count, and then for each landmark there's like the floats and stuff. Okay, real quick, in 10 seconds there's going to be an ad starting, so I'm going to start the ad right now. I'll see you guys in 30 seconds. All right, welcome back. So I was going to look this thing up, right? I was going to look up because like, okay, yeah, I was talking about this body pose message thing. So for that specific situation, I had to create this separate protocol. And I mean, to be honest, whether I did it over bare bones, I keep saying bare bones sockets. I mean, yeah, it's not wrong. Yeah, whether I do it over bare bones sockets or whether I do it over web sockets, I don't think the the overhead is going to be that bad. Though the issue is like if it's like, you know, a few messages every few seconds, that's not a big deal. But if I'm constantly sending data, then I kind of need a proper I kind of need a proper what am I trying to say here? When I'm constantly sending data, I need a system that has the least amount of overhead. So going as low level as possible works out for the best. However, what I need to look into is, would WebSockets really introduce that much of an overhead that it would make a difference? Or can I get away with it? Like sending real time data, but over WebSockets as opposed to bare bones sockets. Let me look this up. Um, WebSockets versus sockets for real time data. Traditional sockets provide low-level control and flexibility for various protocols, making them ideal for custom networking solutions and performance-critical applications. WebSockets, on the other hand, offer a simplified, efficient way to achieve real-time bidirectional communication in web applications. Okay. WebSockets versus REST API for real-time data. Difference between socket and WebSockets. What's the difference between using a WebSocket based? Maybe I should Google this here and open it up here. But oh God, what is going on with my frames? Holy shit. My Yeah, okay, I'm not gonna open the thing up here because everything is gonna freeze if I do that. hold on. Let me close a bunch of this stuff. Oh, by the way, after yesterday's talking stream, where I did a bunch of stuff with the Pillow library, the Pillow Python library, I carried on my learning, my studying off stream as well, and I made progress. I learned the basics of working with Pillow, loading images, creating blank images, and drawing stuff on those images, like setting pixel data, but also doing higher level stuff like drawing shapes, drawing lines, and stuff like that. And I feel like I've gotten the knowledge that I had come to Pillow for, and now I can go. Um, now I can get back to PyTorch, because I very much want to get back to PyTorch, dude. We are so close to getting to the neural network stuff, and I'm super excited for that. But this is a bit of a small detour because I do want to carry on working on my VTubing app. I wanna add a bunch of stuff to it, and anything Twitch API related, it would usually get stuck because there wasn't any proper implementation. Now though, I have an implementation, or well, I'm working on an implementation. Uh, what was I gonna do? Yeah. Let me just give me a second. I'm gonna switch to BRB. All right. WebSocket versus socket for real-time data. Okay. Also, real quick, dude, it's good to know that in the future, because like, I mean, now I have this is just a random thought, but like now I have the knowledge of building something from scratch in terms of, a networking solution. I have the knowledge of building something from scratch, but I also know what to look for if I don't need to implement something from scratch, or if I don't need to implement the system from scratch. I know what to look for, because now I know, because like this whole experience, it got me to explore networking related stuff. There's still like a lot of like low level networking stuff that I want to get into, and like me getting into low level networking, so me getting into socket stuff, it actually forced me to look into various low level networking things and how understand how things work. And that's why I'm glad that I did it. So now I have the knowledge of both of these things. So in the future, when I need any networking related thing, I can decide whether I need to implement something from scratch, or am I able to get by with something like WebSockets, for example. Something I haven't tried out yet is WebRTC, but from what I understand, that's more for like video and audio stuff. Don't quote me on that. I'm just going based off of what little I remember about what I had read. Uh, I'll be looking into that later on. There was actually something I was looking into in Python, because I wanted a way to stream video from one machine to another. Video captured using OpenCV and a web camera. I wanted to stream those frames across the network, but I wanted to be able to use some kind of codec, because codecs make it so the data is kind of compressed in their own way. They compress the data, and that way you're not sending entire frames, you're sending the compressed data, so you're not putting as much of a load on your network as well. Give me a second. Okay, yeah. So I wanted to look into something like that. Give me another second. All right. Okay. Cool. Right. So let's take a look at some of these answers. So let's see what this person has to say in this Medium article. And then there's a couple of answers on Stack Overflow as well. I need to also go back to Rust. I need to get back into, well, I need to finish those last two things that I wanted to implement. I'll implement those, and then actually, I mean, you know what? It's fine. I don't need to implement those. Those were two examples that I kind of wanted to implement. Maybe I'll go back and complete those. But after I've completed those two examples, then those are basically example practice programs that I need to do. There was a list of practice programs that I had done. So these are two that were remaining on my list of stuff that I wanted to do. And then I need to look into unsafe Rust. And once I've done that, I think then more emphasis on the unsafe Rust thing. Like that's more important than the examples. I mean, the examples taught me stuff. So I was going to do that anyways. But more important than these last two remaining programs is learning unsafe Rust, because I want to be able to do Win32 API stuff in Rust. But in order to do that, I need to learn how to do unsafe coding in Rust, because there's quite a lot of functions that require the unsafe context. You need to do it in an unsafe manner, and there are a bunch of situations that I've seen where they're using raw pointers. So I need to learn everything about unsafe Rust so that I can then start doing Win32 stuff in Rust. And that should keep me busy with Rust, because I'm going to be exploring both unsafe coding in Rust, but also exploring the Win32 API. So that should keep me sufficiently busy with doing stuff in Rust, because there's a project that I have. There's a couple of projects that I have in mind, but one that I really want to implement quickly is a scrolling mechanism, because I don't want to have to do this thing where I have to middle mouse click and then an auto scroll icon shows up, which I don't know if that shows up on stream. That the icon doesn't show up, or the cursor thing doesn't show up, but like it pops up here. So when you press the middle mouse button, then in Firefox, if you have auto scroll enabled, then that thing shows up, and then you can like move your mouse up and down to scroll, or well, you can scroll vertically or you can scroll horizontally. I want to implement my own sort of mouse wheel scroll mechanism, or I want to be able to fake it. I want to be able to emulate that. There's a lot for me to explore there. I'm going to have to see what the limitations are, how everything works in terms of sending mouse input. And that kind of goes into multiple other things as well, because the input gets sent to the window. The window has like its own message queue system. So I need to learn about the message queue system, learn about how the various windows, how the windowing system works, and how the input system works as well. So there's going to be a lot for me to explore there. Once I read up on the unsafe Rust thing, uh, then I should be ready to start with Win32. I mean, I've already started, so like I won't be starting brand new, but like I'm still fairly new to doing Win32 stuff in Rust, so it's still gonna be like kind of brand new for me. All right, so this person has written this thing. All right, so what exactly is WebSocket? Well, person of the internet, I'm glad you asked. According to the MDN website, according to the MDN web docs, the WebSocket API is an advanced technology that makes it possible to open a two-way interactive communication session between the user's browser and a server. With this API, you can send messages to a server and receive event-driven responses without having to poll the server for a reply. Wait, what is normally used? Oh, this is okay. This is interesting. So this person is like explaining what else gets used. So they're gonna explain HTTP and how like web pages and all load, and then they're gonna talk about how WebSockets can be used, or how so WebSockets it kind of like fits in with this from what I remember, which is why they were able to like kind of adopt it much more easily. This article might cover that as well. You know what? Yeah, let's read up on. But should we do this right now? This we were supposed to be working on the. Actually, yeah. Let's read up. Let's read up on it. It's fine. Let me hydrate real quick, and then we'll start reading. Okay. Before we dive before we dive deep into WebSockets, let's take a step back and look at HTTP. The HTTP protocol is a set of rules for how computers communicate on the web. It allows for the fetching of resources and is the foundation of any data exchange. It works as a request response mechanism where a connection is open, a request is sent from the client, example the web browser, the server sends a response back, and the connection is closed. HTTP is unidirectional. Only the client can send a request to the server, and it must wait. It must wait until the server sends back a separate response for each request. A common example used for this type of communication is a kitchen in a restaurant. You as the client place an order HTTP request, and a waiter takes that order to the back kitchen, aka the server. The kitchen receives the order and is confirms that the order is correct, meaning an item on the menu. If the kitchen knows how to make it, it will find the ingredients to prepare the order, which is like the server processing the request and fetching data from a database to prepare the response, and will send the food back with the waiter as a successful response. Say you asked for something that's not on the menu. Well, the kitchen might not accept the order, or maybe doesn't have the ingredients to prepare it, so the kitchen will send the waiter back with a message that they can't complete the request. Similarly, to the server sending back an error message or status code 404. Okay. It's also important to highlight that HTTP is stateless. It doesn't know who specifically the request is coming from, i.e. the kitchen doesn't know who you specifically are when ordering the food. It treats and fulfills every request independently. Because this protocol is unidirectional, the kitchen or server isn't able to send the waiter back to you if there's a question they want to ask or update your order. It can only send a response after you specifically send the request in. The only way for you to get updated information from the kitchen is if you send the request through the waiter. In a HTTP protocol, the connection is closed after the response has been sent. After the response has been sent back from the server. This protocol does not lend itself well to real-time applications, as a user would have to refresh the page every time they wanted to see an update to the page, which could be quite frustrating. Before WebSockets were created, oh god, what just happened? Why was that trying to select? Okay, anyways. Before WebSockets were created, several ways that developers would create a workaround for this problem were through short polling, long polling, or server-sent events. We won't get into the nitty-gritty details about these, but let's just say that these solutions were not the most effective for real-time applications, and some were not supported by older browsers. In comes WebSockets. I like that we are reading this whole like fucking history thing. I like that. To put it simply, WebSockets are just another protocol for sending and receiving messages. Similarly to HTTP, they both send messages over a TCP connection. The only difference is how they structure the messages. WebSockets allow for bidirectional real-time communication between clients and servers. Once a connection is established between the client and server, it is kept alive until it is terminated by either party. Messages can be sent back and forth between the client and the server until one of them dies or decides to keep the connection. Close the connection. The WebSockets API, dude, you know, as I'm reading this, I'm getting tempted to implement a version 2 of my communications system. But version 2 is going to use WebSockets instead of bare bones sockets. One of the differences there would be, well, the architecture would be kind of different because I wouldn't be handling a lot of the socket stuff. I would mainly be handling what happens when a message is received, or what happens when a client connects. So I won't be dealing with a lot of the socket stuff, which is great. And now that I know that WebSockets can also receive, it can also send and receive like a byte array. You're not limited to just strings. That kind of changes things. So like the byte array. Oh, okay. So this is one difference. Like there would be an architectural difference between the design of one and the design of the other. Because like in version 1's design, I was dealing with everything. I was designing everything from like the ground up. So I was responsible for everything from the socket communication to receiving and processing the messages. And I think there was also I also had to set up like a little what do you call it? I had to set up like a time-based thing for how often it would be polling the socket to check for messages. There was something that I'd set up for that. I don't remember. Or maybe I'd set it up uh, to listen using a task. I don't remember how I set it up. I'm gonna have to open up the code and see. But I'm not gonna have to do any of that if I start using WebSockets. If I start using WebSockets, I'm gonna be mainly dealing with what happens when somebody initiates a connection and what happens when a message is received. Yeah. And then, I mean, of course, I would then have to process the message that has been received. But in terms of the communication system itself, I won't be doing too much there. Like, that's my point. Because right now with my bare bones system, I had to design like the entire communications thing, right? I can still use the whole raw message thing that I have going on, all of the protocols that I've implemented, all of that can be used. It's just what it's going to be going over, like what communication it's going to be using, what system it's going to be using to communicate is going to be different, right? So earlier it was using bare bones sockets. Now it's going to be going over web sockets. Oh, another, I guess, like significant difference is that now any apps that are trying to communicate with any apps that are trying to communicate with the VTuber app, they're gonna have to any apps that are trying to communicate with the VTuber app, they're gonna have to fuck. This is the second time I've zoned out saying that. Any apps that are trying to communicate with the VTubing app, they're gonna have to connect to the VTubing app, right? Because WebSockets requires that kind of connection. But like that okay, so the reason I kept zoning out was because what I was about to say is, what if somebody wanted to use UDP instead of TCP, right? What would they be using then? But then I remembered OSC exists. OSC is Open Sound Control or Open Sound Communication, something. I think it's Open Sound Control Protocol. Look it up. Don't take my word for it. But the OSC protocol is great for this kind of stuff. And there's also a library for OSC. OSC, from what I remember, it's meant to run over UDP, not TCP. And there's also, like I said, there's also a library for it. So then I would be able to set up an OSC server, and I can send messages that way. There's a library here. Hold on. I know there's a library for Python as well. Definitely there's a library for Python. Give me a second. You know what? Let me try asking Gemini. Okay, let's say I have two programs that want to communicate with each other over the network. I want to use UDP. Aside from implementing, no, aside from, yeah, implementing my own communication system. Fuck's sake, dude. This keyboard is like, you guys can't see it, but I was at like a weird angle trying to type into the keyboard. Okay, aside from implementing my own communication system using bare bones sockets, what are my other choices? Are there other protocols that can help me achieve this? So I'm expecting it to mention OSC in its response. Alternative protocols for network communication in Python. I like that it assumed I was talking about Python. While UDP is a popular choice for networking communication due to its simplicity and low latency, there are other protocols that can be used to achieve the same thing. Okay, it said there are other protocols that can be used to achieve the same thing, and one of those protocols is also UDP. All right, great, awesome. Thank you for that. This is not helpful at all. This response this response was not helpful. WebSockets uses TCP, meaning I would have to meaning the client has to connect to the server. I'm looking for a connectionless protocol, which is UDP, but I'm looking for a higher level protocol that runs on UDP. UDP-based protocols for higher level network communication. Again, UDP is part of that list. Great. Awesome. Okay, it mentions WebRTC can be used for communication. Why is OSC not mentioned? Okay, now let's try Google. Protocols or connectionless protocols for real-time communication. Okay, let's say Stack Overflow. What are the real-time communication protocols available for the web? I recently came across WebSockets and my mind was blown about the possibilities they bring. I searched for a full list of such real-time and near real-time communication protocol technologies such as XMPP. I've never heard of that. I need to look into that. WebRTC, but I couldn't find any near complete list. So help me assemble the list here. Okay. Right. So somebody mentioned WebSocket. Great. WebRTC is an API definition being drafted by the World Wide Web Consortium to enable browser-to-browser applications for voice calling, video chat, and P2P file sharing without plugins. Okay, voice calling and video chat can definitely go over UDP. File sharing can go over UDP, but like you would have to implement your own protocol for that, mostly because of the chance that you know a packet might get dropped. Then there's something called the Bayeux protocol, or Bayeux. I'm not sure how that's meant to be pronounced. Is a protocol for transporting asynchronous messages primarily over HTTP with low latency between. Okay, then there's server sent events. Then there's this. Then there's IRC. No, IRC requires something. Why am I not? Okay, So I'm doing that thing now where I'm trying to get the answer through Google searches, but the answer is not popping up. Um, Protocol for real-time communication. I'm surprised that OSC has just not popped up in any of these. UDP protocol for real-time communication. Because it's one of those things, like, I get stuck in this sort of thought process that what if I didn't know the thing that I know right now? How would I find it on Google? And then I end up wasting my time trying to find it. This is despite me knowing it, by the way. Okay, let's say protocols. Okay, let's say connectionless protocols for real-time. Well, that was my search earlier. Okay. Connectionless protocols for real-time communication. Connectionless communication. Okay, there's a Wikipedia page here. I'm hoping this lists some nope. There is nothing here. Well, I mean, there's something, but like it's not what I'm looking for exactly. Okay, let me try asking this question again. I'm looking for a protocol like WebSockets, but one that doesn't run over TCP, but rather runs over UDP. I'm looking for something that doesn't require connection. UDP-based protocols for connectionless communication. While WebSockets are typically, okay, there's QUIC, which is Quick UDP Internet Connections. I've never heard of this. Disadvantages requires specialized implementations. Okay, then there's WebRTC data channels, can be used for peer-to-peer communication over UDP with built-in reliability mechanisms. Okay, then custom protocols. You're joking, dude. Okay. I've asked you this question multiple times now. How is it that you never mention OSC? I'm curious as to why it didn't mention. You're absolutely right. I apologize for the oversight. Open Sound Control is a powerful and versatile protocol that can be used for real-time communication over OSC. See, this kind of stuff makes me wonder how many other such protocols there are. Okay, let's say which protocols use UDP. Let me try that. Numerous key internet applications use UDP. So on the Wikipedia page, applications, okay. Wow, dude. OSC is just not mentioned. OSC is not mentioned anywhere on the Wikipedia page. So like this kind of brings up that question in my head that like if I didn't know about OSC, I think one of the reasons I know about OSC is because of VR chat. Prior to that, I think I'd heard about OSC. Oh, actually, no, I knew about OSC prior to that as well, but I didn't really know about OSC. I just heard about it, and then I looked into it a tiny bit, and then just like stopped. And um, sorry, got distracted. But then I looked into it more, and dude, I actually tried to implement the thing myself as well. It was interesting. But okay, I'm curious about whether any of these are going to mention, like any of these Google searches are going to mention OSC. The I want to see the term OSC popping up because I want to know if I would have found OSC through this Google search. Had I not known anything about the existence of OSC, would I have found out about this? Actually, okay, I just remembered. Yeah, I've heard about OSC prior to that as well. But again, I didn't understand exactly how OSC worked. I just knew that it was used for stuff. It was back when I was like doing a lot of music production stuff and using DAWs a lot, using a lot of DAWs basically. Uh, I I would hear about OSC because OSC is open sound control, right? It's meant for doing like real time sound related stuff. Stuff like, for example, sending messages from whatever keypad you are using into your DAW or into any other real time application to trigger an effect or something like that. That's just one example. Why was I saying this? I forgot. Anyways, next page. Let me look up protocols like OSC. Cause it is surprising, dude. Like I'm looking this shit up and OSC is just not popping up. I'm trying so hard to get OSC into my search results and it is not popping up. Stack Overflow is also not mentioning anything. Let's say how to communicate between two programs. How to make programs communicate, how to establish communication, how to make two programs talk to each other. Because I'm trying to avoid using the term sockets because then it's just gonna try and show me how to use sockets, and I'm not trying to use sockets. Hold on. How to make two programs communicate across the network. Communication between so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. Okay. Um, yeah, no, this is not what I'm looking for. Wow, dude, this is crazy. It is, it is so hard to get OSC to show up. Unless of course I'm actually looking for OSC, like unless I'm actually searching with the term OSC, for some reason it is so hard to get OSC to show up. All right, well, shit, dude. Okay, fine, whatever. I guess I know about it, and anyone who's watching this VOD now knows about it as well. Spread the word, I guess. Oh God, did the stream just crash? Hold on. Give me a second. Something happened. My streaming machine froze. I think it froze. I'm not sure if it froze. I don't know if the stream is still going. Is the stream still go? Okay, hopefully it's still going. Yeah, okay. Fortunately, it is still going. Great. But things seem frozen. I'm not sure why that is. It buffered, but you're still here. Oz, welcome to the stream. Hello, hello. How's it going? And thank you for letting me know. Um, I'm trying to see how to get my... Hello, hello. How are you doing, Oz? Welcome to the stream. I'm trying to get my system back. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. Oh, okay. You know what? We are still good. We are still good for I don't know how long. Uh the bottom, what do you call the bottom thing? Taskbar, I think, where you are able to like click and minimize or maximize windows. That thing is kind of like frozen, so I'm having to use Alt Tab. But fortunately, I'm able to Alt Tab into OBS. Okay, Oz. Okay, this is crazy. I've been trying. I don't know how much of my little rant you heard earlier, where like I'm trying to so I know about the OSC protocol, Open Sound Control Protocol. Okay, but I was wondering, I was like curious. Okay, if I didn't know about this, because I do this thing every now and then where it's like, okay, I know this thing, right? But I'm curious as to if I didn't know this thing, would I be able to search for it on Google? Would I be able to find it through Google? And what search terms would I need to use? It's a huge waste of time that I do. It's a huge waste of time that I do. Does that sound right? Whatever. It's a huge waste of time, but it's something that my mind just sometimes, ends up hyper focusing on, and then I end up wasting a lot of time doing it. So I just wasted a lot of time doing just that. And you will be surprised by how hard it was for me to get. Okay, I'm saying it was hard. I didn't get OSC to show up at all. Like, I tried looking. I was trying. So basically, so OSC is something that's implemented on top of UDP. It runs on UDP. And because it runs on UDP, so it's a connectionless protocol. You're not connecting with anything. You can just fire messages at the OSC server, and it's gonna accept. So I was looking into WebSockets, which runs on TCP, right? But I wanted a connectionless thing, and one that I know about is UDP. No, one that I know about is OSC, which runs over UDP. So I was like, okay, what if I didn't know about this? Would I be able to find this through Google? Apparently not. Like, apparently I wouldn't have been able to find it if I didn't know about it, which is crazy. I don't know if I just suck at, I mean, after years of Googling, I think I would be pretty good at Googling stuff. So I don't think it's an issue of the search terms that I'm trying to get OSC to pop up somewhere in like, maybe Stack Overflow answers or in some article or something like that. I tried going to page 2 and 3 and 4 of the Google search. It's just not popping up. Yeah, it's not oh wait, no. There's a message before that. It's going okay, just been lurking for a bit. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's not a waste of time because Google search algorithm is weird. I'm having a surprisingly hard time getting OSC to show up. It's not that if I search for OSC, then OSC is not going to show up. If I search for OSC, then obviously it's going to show up. But I'm trying to find other ways to get OSC to show up, and it is just not showing up. Even all the recommendations that people are giving, they're not mentioning OSC at all. They're mentioning other stuff like WebRTC and WebSockets and what was the other UDP thing? I forgot the name. Quick UDP internet connection, and they mentioned custom protocols and stuff. They just did not mention OSC. And I'm like, dude, OSC is so useful. It is super useful. Oh, by the way, I started working on the middleware app for my VTubing app. So now my middleware app is able to. Oh shit! I forgot this thing is frozen. Let me just alt tab into this. Yeah, here you can see I was testing this out earlier in the evening. So I'm going to run this thing again. So the middleware app is supposed to, so far, it's supposed to handle two kinds of data. One is chat messages, and the other is channel point reward redemptions. So anytime it gets one of these types of data, it's gonna process it and package it up into a message, and it's gonna send that message over to the VTubing app, where the VTubing app will then do something with it. So if you remember, I'd mentioned that Twitch had a Unity plugin. I'm not going to use that plugin. I'm going to use this instead. Right. So now now the chat system is connected and the reward system is connected. So for example, if I type in something here, you can see it mentions chat, dem keys, and there's the message. And if I redeem something, like for example, let's redeem this thing that has some input as well. You can see it shows a chat message, and it also shows the reward. For some reason, this thing gets counted as a chat message, but we can ignore that. There's a reward redeemed by dem keys, which is test reward 03, and this is the input. The user input section was something that wasn't. Oh, hold on. Yeah, the user input section was something that wasn't working in the Twitch Unity plugin, and I haven't seen too much. Um, I haven't seen too much progress in that. So I don't know if I'm going to be sticking with that plugin. So instead of that, I'm just going to build my own middleware app and send the messages in that way. You know, something that I want to try out, something that I feel would be fun to experiment with is how quick real-time WebSockets is, or how quick it is to send real-time data over WebSockets. And I feel like I can set up a decent example for something like that using, I could use OpenCV. I could have two separate windows set up, and they can both like in one of them I can move. So basically I can set up an example where there's a square moving in one window, and I'm going to try and replicate that movement in the other window as well. But the other window is waiting for the data to come across the network from this program, from this main window. I don't know if I explained that very well. But yeah, once I've tested that out and I'm confident with, actually I'm also kind of tempted to set up OSC, because OSC is great for connectionless stuff. I really wish OSC would show up in this in the search, but for some reason it's not showing up. Fortunately, OSC is, it's a pretty well-known protocol at this point, but like in a way that's also why it's so surprising that it's not showing up in the list. I I don't get it. I'm going to try and Google that and figure out why that is. Okay. Uh, what was I doing? Yeah, we were reading this thing, right? We were reading the WebSockets thing. I'm gonna try and force Google to show me fucking OSC, because this is some bullshit, dude. Like, it's not mentioning. People have mentioned a whole bunch of other protocols, but they did not mention OSC. For whatever reason, whatever I'm searching is not leading to OSC. Oh, actually, something that OSC was built for was making it possible for your hardware to communicate with some application, right? Um, let me try looking that up. How to make hardware communicate, actually custom hardware communicate with app across the network. What I'm looking for is something that tells me, hey, you can use OSC instead of doing a bare bones sockets implementation, because the bare bones sockets is fine, it's great, but I'm not looking for something to tell me to implement some shit with bare bones sockets. I'm looking for something to mention OSC. Man, this is crazy. Trying to find OSC, even this is not mentioning OSC. This is crazy. Okay, hold on. You know what we're gonna do? I mean, I don't I have like a few people watching me, at any given time, like live. And I have like a couple of people that watch my VODs, so I don't know how much this information that I'm sharing is gonna really spread. But I'm gonna mention it anyways, and you guys, spread it to whoever you want. Oh God, dude, this whole thing is freezing. Oh, OBS is not letting me. Okay, I think my system is close to freezing. Yeah, the whole windowing system is kind of misbehaving. You're joking. Okay, there it is. Oh, also, there's going to be an ad starting soon. I I missed the ad timer, so anytime an ad is going to be starting, and I guess at that point I'll take a little hydration break. You know what? After the ad, I'll tell you guys about OSC, and then you spread this word. You spread the word like, hey, have you heard of our Lord and Savior, fucking Open Sound Control? I don't know when the ad is going to start. This is a problem with missing the ad timer, is that it takes a good like anywhere between 10 and 60 seconds for the ad to start. Yes. Okay, there you go. The ad started. I'm going to hydrate now. Okay. Welcome back, Oz. Thank you for the hydration reminder. As soon as you redeemed that, the ad started, so it was just in time. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, this is OSC. This is an open source protocol for basically for communication. You can use it to communicate between multiple apps on the same machine or across the network, so across multiple machines, or you can also, let's say you've implemented some you've built custom hardware, and you want to be able to communicate between that hardware and some app on your computer, right? You can use OSC for that. You can also use like bare bones sockets, but OSC provides you with a sort of higher level interface to be able to do the communication, so you don't have to implement a bunch of things yourself. You can just use the library itself. It typically takes 5 to 8 minutes, but consistently around 3 minutes of left till pre-rolls are enabled. Oh no, that's not what I was talking about. So, you know how when there's like 3 minutes remaining for an ad to be played, then a timer will pop up saying in 3 minutes an ad is going to be played. So then you get an option to you get a choice to either snooze or run an ad at that time itself. So I usually like to run the ad when there's like maybe 30 seconds or 15 seconds remaining. However, if I miss the timer, if I let the timer go to zero, then it's going to say ad starting soon. When exactly that soon is going to come is anywhere between 10 seconds and 60 seconds. So then I'm kind of just like in that weird window where I'm like, should I say something right now? Uh, if I'm saying something, it might get missed because an ad might start up. Give me a second. Okay, yeah. All right. So, sorry, just a second. Okay. Anyways, so this is the OSC protocol. Look it up. You don't have to implement the protocol yourself. There's a bunch of libraries implemented for a bunch of different languages. I know for sure C# has multiple, Python has multiple. One one OSC library that I know about, which was made for Unity, I believe. It was made by somebody at the time. They went by Stella, and they were working for they were actually working for Unity. They worked for Unity Labs, and that person had made their own implementation of OSC, and they mentioned that it was with focus on performance, which was great. And that library was so good that when VRChat wanted to implement OSC in VRChat, then the devs, they forked that library, and of course they had to make some of their own changes to implement it into VRChat, but they forked that library and made their implementation out of that. That's how good it was. And I've used it myself. It was great. It makes it super easy. Yeah, mine is 5 minutes. Then it waits till the 3 minute mark. So 8 minutes for me. Oh, wait, yours is 5 minutes. Then it waits till the 3 minute mark. Okay, that's interesting. I thought it warns everyone at the 3 minute mark. Oh, I think that's what you're saying. Anyways, I'm just getting confused. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Um, OSC. You guys need to look into OSC if you're trying to do communication between two apps or two machines, or some custom hardware that you have made and a machine on the network. Definitely look into OSC. You can also use bare bones sockets. However, if you're looking for a higher level interface where you just need to call certain functions, where you can like pass in the data to those functions, and then the library will handle all of the communication for you, you can use OSC. And the great thing about OSC is that it's usually meant to run over UDP. I think there are TCP implementations, but from what I remember, it's meant to run over UDP. So usually you don't need to connect devices. You can just like send. You can just like send messages. That's basically how UDP works, where there's a UDP server, and the server will just keep listening on whatever port, whatever uh well, not whatever IP address, but it'll keep listening on whatever port, and then any application, be it on the same machine or across the network, can send messages to that IP address at that port. And because the server is listening at that port, so it's gonna receive that message. So yeah, this is my PSA. Look into OSC because apparently nobody is gonna tell you about OSC. So 5 minutes to snooze or not. When it reaches 3 minute mark on pre-roll timer, I'm distracting you. My bad. Uh no, that's fine. You can feel free to distract me. It's just I'm trying to understand that, and I'm not able to understand it. That is why I just let it go. Um because like even that, okay, so 5 minute to snooze or not. Oh, when it reaches 3 minute mark on pre-roll time. Okay, I didn't get that part. When it reaches 3 minutes mark on pre-roll timer. Um, but that's fine. Because okay, on my end, this is how it works. Anytime there's an ad about to pop up, there's the ad timer. It's gonna mention in 3 minutes there's gonna be an ad playing, and then that timer just keeps counting down. I need to look into whether it's actually 5 minutes, and I've been thinking it's 3 minutes. I don't think it's 5 minutes for me. I think it's 3 minutes. Though that could just be going back to like me not really being able to understand, or me not being able to like visualize what you're explaining. Um, Either way, it's fine. Whatever. So we're gonna carry on reading this. I'm super disappointed that fucking Google and even Stack Overflow, nobody has mentioned OSC. Like, why? Though I should look into what is that thing? UDIC? UIDC? Give me a second. It is QUIC. QUIC. Quick UDP internet connections is a transport layer protocol that is quickly being adopted across. How old is this thing? I don't know. There's no date here. Across the internet, and is the default standard for Google's Chrome browser. All right, let's take a look at it. It's normally layered with UDP. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So, okay. All right. It was first implemented and deployed in 2012. It was publicly announced in 2013 as experimentation broadened and was described in so and so. All right. It's used by more than half of all connections. But okay, what kind of like interface does it provide? Because UDP by itself, from what I know, doesn't provide an interface. This also mentions that it's a transport layer protocol, which is lower than application layer. So I don't know. Wait, what is what level is WebSockets on? Wait, this is on the same level as UDP. It's weird OSC isn't mentioned. Is OSC used for anything big, or is it something akin open source software that didn't take off? OSC is used for a bunch of different things. So, okay, to give you an idea. So imagine this, okay? You have um you have for the sake of a simple example, I'll keep it up to just applications, but you can like broaden the use case to multiple different things, even like custom hardware. But let's say you have two computers on a network, right? And both of these computers have an app running on them, and you want to be able to send messages one from one app to the other app. But like one app is on one computer and the other app is on the other computer, right? You can use bare bones sockets where just use sockets. Like you create a socket object, and then you can send data using that socket object. But that's very bare bones. So you're usually working with bytes in the case of sockets. If you want to do something more high level, if you want something where you don't have to implement the socket connection stuff yourself, then you want to use a higher level protocol like OSC, which runs on UDP. So technically, even that uses sockets, from what I know. Even OSC uses sockets, but the difference there is when you are using bare bones sockets, you are going to be responsible for packaging the data into like a byte array that can then be sent. And then on the other end, you're going to have to like receive the data and then decode that data into whatever. So you would have to worry about specifying various types of information so that the other end can decode the data much more easily. Another issue you have is handling the communication itself, or checking for data, I should say. So when data can be received or not. So there's a lot of like communication related stuff. There's a lot of communication related implementation that you would have to handle if you were doing bare bones sockets. On the other hand, if you're using something like OSC, it builds a bunch of things on top of UDP. So from your end as the programmer, you just have to install an OSC library, and then you have to call methods like, I don't know, send integer or send float or send this, send that, and then you can send little bits of data, or you can send big blobs of data as well across the network. You can also specify like an address, and it's gonna create the message according to the OSC protocol standard, and it's gonna send that message across the network, where you're gonna have an OSC server on the other system, which again, you have a library for it. You can implement the server using that library, and then in the server, you just need to specify way you need to specify what exactly this server is looking for. Like what types of messages, or not what types of messages, but what types of data the server. How do I say this? You need to specify what the server is supposed to do upon receiving the messages. You don't need to worry about the implementation of the communication itself. Whereas if you're doing bare bones socket stuff, you're going to have to worry about the implementation on both the server and the client side. So OSC, it really simplifies things because it makes it so all you have to do is install the library, and then you can implement your client and implement your server. You don't need to worry about implementing the connection logic for your client and server. And this can be extended to various other things as well. Like you can use it for, let's say, if you were making custom hardware, if you've created your own keypad sort of thing, and you want to send messages from that to a DAW or even to a game engine, you can easily send the messages using OSC, which you can do it using bare bones sockets as well. But using OSC, you would sort of you would spare yourself the headache of handling a bunch of the low level stuff. And OSC runs over UDP, so it's usually connectionless, meaning you don't have to first connect to the server. You can just like throw messages at the server, and the server will receive them. Though because it's UDP, so there's also chances that the messages could get dropped. But a lot of times you don't have to worry about that unless there's like tons and tons of messages being sent. Then yeah, some could accidentally get dropped. I don't know how well I explained. I think I explained it all right. But yeah, that's OSC. And it is super weird that it's not mentioned in, at least in the searches that I've been looking for. I mean, if I look up OSC, then yeah, it's gonna show up. If I look up OSC protocol on Google, yeah, it's gonna show up. But like what I was hoping for was, if I was looking into real-time communication, if I was looking into real-time communication using a connectionless protocol, I was hoping that OSC would pop up in that, but it didn't. Okay, getting back to WebSockets. So I need to look into how well the real-time communication would be in if I was using WebSockets. And I feel like one good way to sort of test this out is setting up two separate Python programs that draw a square on an image, and then they move the image. Well, not move the image, they move the square. So what I can do is I can try and move the square on one program, right? And then I'm going to send that data over to, so I'm going to send the square's position over to the other program using WebSockets. And I want to see how quickly the other program prints the square in that exact same location. Okay, so this person explained this whole thing in pretty decent detail. I'm happy about that. I don't know if I'm gonna read the whole thing because I've looked into WebSockets and I kind of understand how it works. The thing is, WebSockets runs over TCP, which again, like I've mentioned this before, I was trying to avoid the connection thing. I wanted to keep things connectionless. You know what? We've looked into OSC, right? The library. Okay, so let's say OSC software. Was it called Touch? No, I don't think it was called Touch OSC. So there was something called Touch OSC. Oh wait, no, I think Touch OSC was made for sending OSC messages. A GPU-powered, fast and advanced integrated editor as part of Touch OSC on all platforms. Create the most powerful complex of control layouts with ease and precision. Okay. Okay, so there's Tiny OSC, there's this one. Lightweight OSC implementation, OSC library, GitHub. Why is Stella's thing not showing up? Is it still up or not? I'm not sure. Though good to know that there's Arduino implementations. There's definitely going to be an ESP32 implementation as well for MicroPython. Or well, hopefully there's going to be an ESP32 implementation, and I'm gonna be using that for something, because I have some custom hardware that I want to make. Where's the... Oh, there it is. OSC core. For some reason, it was hard to get this to show up. So this was the thing, a performance oriented OSC library for Unity. So if I want to use, and this is one of the VR chat devs, if I want to use OSC in my VTubing app, or if I want to use a connectionless thing in my VTubing app, then this would be one way to go about it. Is there a docs page? I think it was like fairly simple. So all of the documentation could like fit into this thing alone. But I just want to see. Sending messages. Okay. Because OSC, from what I remember, it allows you to send a couple of different types of. So you have like your usual data types, right? But it also allows you to send blobs of data, which is great because that way you can send the blob of data, and then whatever is receiving that blob is then responsible for handling, for processing all of that data. So like, let's say you had to send something that's a little more complex than, one integer or one float, then you can like put it into a blob of data, and then whoever is receiving that data is responsible for actually processing it. Where's the client thing? Okay, send so and so. Yeah, I'd forgotten about this thing. So OSC uses this concept of addresses. So like when you send an OSC message, you're sending it to a specific address, and you're sending a value along with that. I don't think a value is always necessary. I think like in some cases you would just be calling that. I don't remember exactly, but I believe that there are like situations where you don't need to send. I don't know if this implementation allows that or not, but there was a thing like that. Oh yeah, okay, here's the example. So you can send a blob, you can send a string, you can also send a single float element. Right. So if I want to change my own communication system in my VTubing app, and I want to start using something else instead, like one of these other ready-made protocols, I can either choose between OSC and or WebSockets. One massive difference between the two is that WebSockets requires a connection, but OSC doesn't require a connection. Like you can see here, you don't have to connect. You just have to create the client and mention the IP address and the port, and then you just start calling send. Like it works that way even with bare bones sockets, where you can just initialize the socket and then you call send to, and in send to you specify the IP address and the port, and of course you also specify the data that you want to send, and it just sends it. You don't have to like connect. But like the server has to bind to a socket in order to listen to it. But even the server, I don't think it has to connect to anything. Okay, hold up. Hold on just a minute. All right, great. So here's what we're going to do. Okay. There's a person called Pixel Salad VT. Let me just check that thing. Okay. Yeah, there's a person called Pixel Salad VT who's doing some game development in Godot. We're going to go raid this person. Okay. I'm going to end the stream here. I just realized the time. Oh, fuck's sake, dude. Come on. My keyboard is misbehaving right now. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Are we good? Yes, we are good. Okay, so that's going to be it for today's stream. I'm going to carry on doing all of this exploration that I was doing, and I'll see whether to implement WebSockets or not, or whether to use the WebSockets library or not. Oz, thank you very much for hanging out and chatting and stuff. Thank you for the stream. Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you hanging out here as well. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today's stream. I hope you guys have a nice day, and I will see you all next time. Peace.